Good afternoon and evening, and perhaps even good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Three Wise Potatoes podcast. It's been an exceptionally long time since our last one, but we've had a fair amount of good things happen in between, celebrations happen in between, and I think perhaps we're all took some time off for ourselves as well during the first half of the year. There's plenty of, I think, self love self repair that needed to be done and getting away, holidays, so on and so forth. And I mean, even we get tired and fatigued at times because of life. So, but we're back and we look to continue this journey with you this year. So, thank you all for listening. And once again, we have with us Dean and Prush. Welcome back, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
How's everything been?
Busy, like you say, but good.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of changes, lots of discovery, lots of
Yeah.
new adventures.
For those, I think especially the biggest change, I suppose, in your life, but we won't
Yeah.
discuss that much. But it's private. But that was
Well, you
a
can tell
big
them,
one.
I guess. It's not really a thing, right? I got married in April, so
Hey yo.
it was
Congratulations!
quite the busy period.
Oh man, no, it was
Yeah,
exceptional. Um, Such a fun
that was a lot of
weekend.
fun.
Oh yeah, we all had a blast. That whole week actually was amazing.
Hmm.
Yeah, like you guys made a week of it.
Yeah, obviously.
And obviously
One of
being
the potatoes
in the
gets married,
wedding.
it's a whole week thing.
But like being the person that gets like actually married, that week is not like it is fun, right? But there's a lot of things that you have to do, so it kind of blows by really quickly.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a lot of stuff that you like don't get to partake in, like the night befores and stuff. I think you went to my fiance's night before.
Yeah.
So like those things, you sometimes you kind of miss the some of the fun. Um,
Hmm.
but like in the same vein, I also had my own different fun, which like she didn't come to and stuff like that. So it's
Hmm.
yeah, it's just a thing of like, but I'm glad that people made a week of it, um, which like you guys did, because it actually makes it quite fun. I think most people's weddings like globally is like 2 days, like in
Hmm.
total, and making a week of it sort of extends the fun, but also reduces the level of stress that's happening only in 2 days, I think, in some way.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think for us as well, because we feel like we're part of the family, we were part of everything.
Yeah.
Part of the
You
ship,
are
part
part
of
of
the
the
crew.
family.
Yeah, part of the ship, part of the crew. We did all the things.
That's true.
Hey, as
We
long as you had
enjoyed
fun,
it.
that was the idea.
Oh, we did. We did.
That's what weddings are about.
Fun,
For fun.
happiness, and celebration. Yep.
Exactly. Which we I think we needed after a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, um, today is Dean's topic. We have no idea, as is tradition, podcast what the topics are. So we get told about them right now. So without further ado, Dean, I will hand over to you so you can grill us today.
Thank you very much. So viewers or listeners, like Yash has said, the guys have no idea what the topic is, but Yash actually did briefly touch on it in the intro, and we touched on it a little bit in the preamble to this. The topic for today is about rest, recovery, and fatigue.
Ooh.
And yeah, I know the reason why I decided to go with this topic is that it is something that is very current and relevant, but probably is still flying under the radar because of everything else that's going on in the world, and quite rightly so. There's a lot of stuff happening all over the world. Locally, we just did our elections here in South Africa, so there's a hell of a lot going on. But what's not getting talked about enough is fatigue, and then how to rest and recover from it. And what made me really sit up and take notice, and this, like, I've felt this heavy sense of fatigue for quite a while now, like a constant sense of tiredness where it feels like I'm constantly running at 10% battery, and then, it's like you start Monday from a deficit. And it feels like there were a couple of other people I came across that were like that as well. Like people in the office have said it. I think the two of you have mentioned it to me at different times as well, where you feel like there's a lot of fatigue. But there was a guy in London. He put out a video on TikTok, and he was saying he actually started the video by asking, "Is it just me, or is everybody feeling the fatigue?" And then he went on for a little bit saying how he's just too tired to do anything, and weekends are used for admin and rest. And him and his girlfriend haven't had any time, or haven't gone out on the weekend for quite a while. Like they get to Friday night, they look at each other and say, "Can we just have a quiet one this weekend?" And they seem to do that every weekend. And I wanted to find out, is that something you've noticed in your circles? Like the first question is, how much of this fatigue have you noticed in yourselves and in your circles?
Um, I can go first.
Go for it,
Yeah,
Josh.
go for it.
Yeah, 100%. I can actually attest to that sort of feeling. Um, Look, it does come part and parcel with the fact that obviously I just went through the whole escapade of
Wait.
getting married and stuff. So you have
Yeah.
the whole honeymoon, and then you come back, and then obviously you're tired. But I've had a few compounding things, like I just changed jobs at the same time. So I started the new job as soon as I finished with the honeymoon and things like that. So obviously it's quite tiring. But normally I'm usually a high energy person and I can still do stuff on weekends. But
Mm-hmm.
even now, like I think a mate of mine was asking me, let's do something a couple week like next weekend or something. And I was like, can I just have a free weekend and then we can plan something after that, you know?
Yeah.
And then I just found myself realizing that I'm actually quite drained. Um, and I've always been a person, and I don't know why, but after I turned a certain age, I just like I like to have Sundays alone, you know, or to myself or in my own house. I think it's just a thing of I find that I require a day of just like downtime, and the weekends, unfortunately, are the only time you really get that because you have a 5-day work week, and you get home every day and you still have to cook and clean, and then you get like a couple hours to rest, and then you like sleep, wake up, and then you do it again.
Hmm.
And I I like we used to be the type of people who used to still work on stuff in the evening and things. And in my previous job, it was a thing of I was working consistently, right? And with the new job, it's not so much so, but obviously I just started, so it could ramp up quite quickly in the next coming months. But as it is, I found that my previous job was extremely stressful. And it's getting to that point where now I find that weekends I just want to relax a little bit and just have a down weekend like once a month where I don't do anything. Order some take out and just chill in with like a beanie on or something and just watch TV. Um, so I definitely find that that's something that's the case.
Okay. And Yash?
Um, okay, so I think for the past few months, I think at the beginning of the year, okay, let's just say last year. Let's just say last year. A lot of things have been plaguing me, I'd say. But I think those issues with the root causes of the fatigue and just the amount of rest that I have been getting as well. So yes, I have been feeling like this is come the weekend time, and there's only one thing to do, and that is to just sit at sit at my sit on my couch or whatever, or on my work chair, and just try and build myself up for the next week. And I fully attest to what Bridge has mentioned as well, where the repetition of the day in day out kind of gets you down to a point as well. Like there's a there's a saying. I think a lot of people are looking forward to the weekend. And they're they're. I don't think that the work week itself or the week is as exciting to them as the weekend, what the weekend represents. I think I mentioned in this a really long ago past podcast. We have to sometimes try and flip the mindset such that we actually look forward to the Mondays as well, rather than just the weekends. I mean, it's a telling sign that you're in the wrong space or in the wrong job even, if you're looking more forward to the weekend than the Monday. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of the times as well, we only have a set amount of energy, which we've discussed in the past.
Mm.
And that energy is used up for the 8 hours that we spend at work, either through meetings and engagements with people and, you know, emotional meetings and so on and so forth. And you just don't have the energy left in the day. I mean, Crush says he comes home, then he has to, cook and do some cleaning up, and then you just don't really have that time to yourself. That's that time to recover from the day even. And I know if people have kids, then they also might not have that time, right? Because you have to spend time with your kids, and you have to help them with their homework, and by the time things roll around, it's already 10 o'clock. You have to go to sleep and then do the same things the next day. It just becomes a cycle of really repetition of things that don't allow time for ourselves during the week. And it adds up such that when Friday comes around, we're done. Like we're completely done. And we just don't have the energy to continue. And we have to just stay at home. Like Prash says, he prefers that time alone. And that time alone is really his recovery time. And if we had that, just a little bit of recovery every day during the week, then we might not feel so bad when it comes to that Friday.
Can we just explore the idea of rest versus recovery? And I say rest versus recovery because they could potentially be two very different things here. And the analogy I want to use is if you, let's take muscles, for example, right? You can have muscular fatigue, in which case rest is all you need. But if you have an injury, then you need rest and you need some form of active recovery that promotes blood flow, right? So the way you approach the situation is different. So are we just tired, or are we actually emotionally or mentally injured and carrying an injury, and that's why we're constantly, it's like a double whammy, and we need to find some way of recovering, and we just don't know that yet?
Yeah, I think it's that emotional. I think it is linked to emotional, right? And then we can link it to physical as well, in terms of exertion during the day and exertion during the weeks, and it adding up, and so on and so forth. But the emotional strain that it takes, or the mental concentration that it takes to get through the day, really brings us down. And that fatigue and tiredness is, or that fatigue, or that mental fatigue, is we just don't have any more capacity to think. And from that fatigue, we have to rest. And we don't actually take that full time to rest. If I'm explaining that correctly, in some sense. But I think it's more the emotional and the mental that gets completely down and completely fatigued. And we're just not giving enough attention to that.
Okay.
I agree. I do agree with both the idea of what Code has said, or Yasha said, and the linking it to like the muscle rest and recovery. I definitely think that there's a physical aspect to it, but like Code is saying, that emotional aspect is a major player in how you recover, even physically, in a lot of ways. And I think just from own personal experience, being that having that need for emotional recovery, and I think Code even said it earlier, maybe finding ways of recovering emotionally periodically, even during your week, can definitely help with the recovery aspect. Um, while the rest aspect, just I feel like, if I'm as I'm saying it, rest is something that requires a finite amount of time, right? And recovery requires a finite amount of um, how to say this, energy input. I don't know if that makes sense, or
Yeah,
energy
it does.
recovery. Whereas rest is just, you can be fully recovered, but you still need rest. but you can be fully rested but not be fully recovered, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. Like you said, you feel like you're carrying an injury, an emotional injury.
Yeah.
Um, and that for me, it's actually, those are big things for me, in terms of how you guys explain it. And that explanation is actually quite big.
I think
Uh, yeah,
I think as well, your mind is also extremely powerful in
yeah,
every aspect, and it can manifest emotional strain as physical. It can manifest emotional tiredness as physical tiredness, like such your body
yeah,
is full physically drained. I mean, I've mentioned to you guys in the past there was real emotional turmoil within me, and it manifested physically as severe heart pain, as an example,
yeah.
crushing heart pain. So it's definitely possible for it to, like emotional, to roll over into the physical because of how powerful your mind is. It's telling you, it's
Mm,
giving you the indicators that hey, you need to do something. And I remember in the past I've mentioned in earlier podcasts how I detect uh, that I need to make a change. It's my physicality. My body will physically
mm,
tell me, hey, something's wrong and I need to change, and that sort of thing. And
mm,
and just to extend what Prash said as well, I think, with recovery it does have a finite time, but I think it's an extended time. I think it's a bit more than what rest would give you.
mm,
Like I think Dean, when he described the physical muscle the muscle problems that you might have had, that usually takes your recovery period is extended over the rest of your week. And I think that's both of those areas is something that really we're neglecting these days. But we also don't
mm.
know um, how to properly, address these areas.
Yeah, I think that's something that I want to dig into a bit more is the how to remedy it, right? And
Mm.
like, are we actually equipped to recover? And like as Yash and Guja both pointed out, your mental state can have a huge implication on your physical state, right? Like physically, you can have the energy to do things, but if your brain won't allocate that energy, you're tired. You can't do it. You will feel physically tired, and you will feel completely demotivated. But on the point of like with a muscular injury, for example, right, where you need things like rest, like your sleep, you need nutrition, then you need some form of rehabilitation and active recovery work to get the muscle working again, get blood flow going. The question that I have is about how do we go about recovering, not just resting. And there's a quote I want to just read out quickly, and it says, "What if we're burnt out because we're doing too little of what fuels us and too much of what drains us? We
Mm,
have still got a high output, but the input is terribly low."
mm,
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. I think there was one of my digital shorts that I put out, I think a few weeks back, where I said do more of what makes you happy
Hmm.
to sustain to sustain happiness, but we're not doing that. Or people need to identify firstly what makes them happy. And I think Dean, you mentioned to me what fills your cup.
Yeah.
You need to know what fills your cup, and if you don't know what that is, then you can't do more of it. Guj mentioned long ago, I think 2 years ago, in some of the podcasts, where he says that the way he recovers is by doing all the things that really drives him. And I think it was
mm,
there's some of the examples that he used was he used to do the puzzles, which he's finished,
mm,
which he's
mm.
really good at, and
I need
and,
new
and just
ones.
things. Say again?
Mm. I need new ones.
Yeah, you
But
do.
yeah, yeah, 100, you're 100% right in terms of that. Yeah.
And there were other things that he mentioned as well. But it's really now about looking at the person and identifying for yourself what does fill your cup, what brings that
Mm,
smile to your face. And I remember Prash said, he said, whatever brings that happiness from within you, um, unconsciously as well. You're
mm,
not consciously focused on actually bringing the happiness out, but you're doing the something, and then the byproduct of it is the happiness. I think that's what he
mm.
mentioned 2.5 years ago in the
Yeah,
podcast.
it's
And
about being in that state of joy, you know.
yeah, yeah,
Um, that state of joy. Remember that happiness is a byproduct of joy. So the
yeah.
more you seek out joy, the invariably the more you'll be happy for longer. Happiness is like the after effects of joy,
Mm-hmm.
in the way I see it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, carry on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you're talking
Um,
about filling your cup, right?
Yeah.
But what happens if the cup is cracked?
I mean, like you said, right? You're doing
Which would be the proverbial injury, I suppose.
yeah.
correct. That emotional injury, or that physical injury, or whatever it is. That no matter what you do, it's like a sieve. As
Exactly.
much water as you put in, it's never gonna fill the sieve up.
Or it'll be temporary, right? Oh, and it'll be a lot more temporary than what it should be, right?
Yes.
You can't just fill up your cup once and expect it to stay, right? It's got to be an active thing. But
Yeah.
if there's a leak, then it's going to drain quicker.
I
But
think it's
you have to recognize
yeah.
whether your cup is cracked, you know, um, and it's not so easy to notice, because also depression plays a big part in there,
Hmm.
and it's not easily noticeable, right? But when it's sort of a thing of you need to understand yourself really well to know that even though I'm doing the things that I love, right? Um, I'm not sustaining joy for longer periods, um, and and when you notice those things happening, then it's a thing of I need to look within myself to see what's draining my energy. Like Code was saying just now, it manifested physically, right? And when you notice those things happening, then you need to try and figure out within yourself what is causing this. Because sometimes you can't pinpoint it,
Hmm.
so you need to look at what is making you feel this way. And Code used the example of my work is so complicated and so draining to me that even if I have a great weekend, Monday is just the most daunting thing, you know? Um, and then it becomes a thing of um, I need to look at what I can change about my current status to improve overall my contentment with life. And that
Okay.
if that requires you, like Code was saying, changing jobs or something like that, then it's not always the most prescribed option. But I mean, I can attest to it, right? I can give you my own example. Uh, the job wasn't bad. I enjoyed the work. I loved the people were amazing. They looked after me. They gave me a chance to grow. The work was fun. I was learning something, but it was just so stressful, right? And while it was fun, doesn't mean it can't be stressful. And at some point, the stress overtook the enjoyment, and then it just became something where I didn't enjoy the feeling that I had continuously of I need this to be sorted out, I need that to be sorted out, and then I was like, and then at some point, it registered in my brain that this, in the long run, is not something that I want, you know, and then you have to start making moves to change that thing, right? And I'd only been working there for a year. So within 6 to 8 months, I realized it's not something that I wanted. And then I took steps to move out of it, you know. And luckily for me, things came about. But sometimes it takes longer. But at least if you're recognizing that, then you're allowed to make that change. But when your cup is cracked and you don't actively start seeking out the areas in your life that are leaking your whole energy pot, then it becomes this thing of I'm consistently drained and I can't figure out why. And everything that I do that's fun is fun for the time, but then it ends really quickly and I get back to the dread. And when you have that situation, it can really, it can do really, really terrible things to you. Um, and that for me is something that I don't, I would hope that a lot of people are in that situation can find a way out, because I could see what it was doing to me, and it was so terrible. I needed to get out, and I just found a way, and I worked at it until I got out, and that's what happened. But if you're stuck in that sort of situation, actively look at the things that are draining you and understand what is happening, and if you can change those things to make your life better, is something that will really improve your life. Even if it's small things, it helps.
Okay. Yash, anything to add?
Yeah. I think Prash mentioned the actively seeking out things um, that obviously are leaking or cracked even. But sometimes though you are blind to things because you're too close to it. You
Hmm.
don't know what you don't know. Or
Mm.
there's something there, but really you can't see it at this point because you're too close to the situation. I think I'd like to add that I would love to trust the people that are closest to me as well, just to tell me, hey,
Mm.
I see when you're doing certain things, you seem unhappy or you seem partially happy, but you're not to the full extent of what it could be. Not to the full extent of what it could be. Sorry, um, and just having that outside person look in could help in that situation because we all, I mean, we all want to be in a certain state. It's not like we want to feel sad or a certain way or tired or fatigued or so on and so forth. But sometimes we just can't see it. We just don't know where to start even. And just that little bit of outside help can always assist you in anything. And I think Krish really mentioned the uh, looking, like when he was in that situation, he really looked at what could be changed. And I think having that mindset that you at least have some sort of control. Yes, there'll be
Mm.
external factors, and you might not have the full 100% control. But he looked at what are the little things that he could have changed to actually alleviate things first before taking on the full drastic and leaving and moving on from it. And I think that's very important because you we all sometimes go with things that, oh, we can't change it. I'm just going to leave it. I'm just going to sit here and wallow in pity. But there are minute steps that we can take toward a better state of mind as well as a better emotional state, um, and find things that are making us unhappy, and make the small changes toward something better for us. And so, I think that was very important for Prush to mention, and something I just wrote down here as well.
Okay. You talked about blindness there. I think that's quite interesting because the cure to that is awareness of some degree, right? Um, so if I can ask that we maybe look at this slightly differently. So we talked about the cup, we talked about filling the cup, and then there's potentially cracks to the cup. But is there a way to separate? So there's things that drain what's in the cup, right? Your energy. There's things that drain it. And that could be a crack, but it could also be the demands of what's in that cup, right? So what is
Mm.
taking from that cup? And it could be leaking out, or it could be stuff that's coming, that you're required to give energy to. So is there a way of just organizing the stuff that's happening in your life into the cracks on the cup and the demands of the cup, if that makes sense?
Mm. Yes, in part. Um, it depends. For me, it's a thing of I don't know. I see the cracks in the cup as and the things in the cup as different um, problems, different types of problems. The things
Yes.
in the cup is about energy management and time management, right? Um, and the cracks in the cup are about self-development, self-growth, but also self uh, kindness, acceptance, and also change. You know,
Okay.
um, I see them very differently, and to organize them, you can definitely organize them. You can say these are higher priority, these are smaller priority. I can deal with these at different times. Some things I can work on weekends, but um, for me, it's a thing of imagine. I don't know if I can use an example, but imagine, say, for example, you at work and work is so demanding, and then you have to come home and you live a single life, but you still have to come home, cook, clean, make sure that everything's ready for the next day, but still finish up pieces of work. And then you also have hobbies, so like you go play soccer in the evening. Imagine how demanding of your day that is, right?
Yeah.
But that's not a crack in the cup. No, say
Yeah,
for example,
exactly.
yeah, say for example, a crack in the cup is you just broke up with someone, right? And you still have to do all these other things in your day, right? But you also still have to deal with the emotional, um, I don't want to say the word baggage, but for lack of a better word, baggage that you have at this point, right?
Well, there's grief,
That
right?
is, yeah, like grief, right? So that for me is like what we would call, like what I would call a crack in the cup type of scenario. And that requires not only time, but self growth, self acceptance, and eh, you know how I find it very difficult to prioritize them. You know, it's a thing of sometimes certain cracks in the cup need time, you know, to get better. And then sometimes some things just need effort right now to solve. Um,
Hmm.
so I definitely get that there's a prioritization level. I just also think that it requires a lot more energy to fix a crack in the cup than, personally for me anyway, because it's how I classify them. A crack in the cup requires massive amounts of energy, whereas just things that are pulling from your energy pool from your cup are things that just require bursts of energy to solve and relieve. Um, and prioritization of those things becomes tricky because it also depends on your own time management and
Okay.
energy management. Yeah, I don't know if that explains the question, sort of.
Does. Yash, what's your view?
So I think when you asked the question, something came to mind, or an imagery came to mind. I remember the the
Japanese cup?
champagne fountain. No, no,
Oh.
not kintsugi. I was going to explain kintsugi just now to people later on. Trust me, I was 100%. I wrote this down in my notes now. I was going to explain kintsugi. Um, but it's just the fountain of champagne glasses,
Yeah.
Yes.
where you pour from the top and then everything flows in an infinite sort of way to everything. I
Hmm.
think that's an imagery that I pictured when you asked what is the what is the hodgepodge in the pot, and how do you deal with the mini cracks that come upon them. But for me, I think Crush touched on this as well. I think I have separate buckets for each thing, for each area. That's specific to me, in a sense,
Interesting.
where I
Mini
won't
cups,
let one
many
thing.
energy reserves. Yeah.
Well, not many energy reserves. I don't think it's that. I think it's for example, the lead cup in this champagne fountain will be one area of life for me, and then um, because now it has a rippling effect onto the cups beneath it, or
Hmm.
the champagne glasses beneath it. That same energy flows throughout, and that's how they're all connected. So that's why that imagery came to mind. It's not that they're all separate; they're all connected,
Yeah.
but it flows through from the top right through the bottom, and then there and back again, right?
Hmm.
So that's how I envision what's happening internally for me. Like I'll have a source cup, and then it distributes to each and one of the other places. That's what I'm getting at. And by compartmentalizing each thing like that, I'm able to deal with each issue that arises in each of the areas separately from each other. But the energy, or the flow of energy, still comes from one place. If I'm explaining that correctly, like I still have to have enough energy input, like Crush mentions. It takes a massive amount of energy to deal with issues
Hmm.
um, from one area to the next. But for me, it's I separate each of these things into compartments and compartmentalize them, rather than having everything in one area in one pot, and having to deal with all issues at the same time. I think in the past I've mentioned like I had to do that in order to gain some sort of control um,
Hmm.
in terms of in my life. So, which is why I separated emotions from physical, mental, and so on and so forth. But that's literally like how I see myself dealing with issues.
So it's a bit like a salary and a budget then.
Uh, yeah, you could analyze it like that. Yeah?
So what happens if the one cup is quite badly cracked, right, and it can't hold any of the champagne, but the other cups are full? Um, do you then start taking, like, how do you address it? Does what happens?
I think there was one that was really imbalanced these past few weeks, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
You know, and literally what I had to do was redirect all energy flow just to try and repair that or fix that cup up. That's what I had to do. I had to redirect everything just to getting stabilization in that area again. I think, for example, if you want to picturize this, it's you have your champagne fountain again, and let's just say four rows down, either off to the side or in the center. The neck of the champagne glass was pretty much almost on its last legs, and everything was going to topple afterward. So that's how I describe it visually. So what I had to do then was just redirect all and focus every single amount of energy that I had to that one area. So in dire situations, that's what I have to do.
Gotcha.
But say, for example, you're in that situation. When you say redirect all your energy, do you? I know, obviously, I would assume that you don't, but you don't drop everything and then solve that problem, right?
The life
You
still goes
wait
on.
until you wait till you wait until it's a feasible time for you to do so.
Oh yeah. That was the
Okay,
weekend.
Yeah, sure.
It
Okay,
just
no, then that then
it just
yeah,
turned
no,
out it
then
was
I
the
get
weekend.
it. Then I
Yeah,
totally
all
agree because
discretionary energy goes towards the problem then.
Yeah,
yeah.
because
So I think it's just a thing of I like to understand like because I may not. You and me may not operate the same way, you know. If you
yeah.
find that there's a problem that's like life, not changing, but life ejecting, you know, you wanna like drop everything and deal with it. But sometimes like life, like you say, life has to go on.
Mhm.
Um, and for me, it's a thing of I just like to understand. Maybe we would deal with it the same way because I think I would also deal with it the same way. I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna deal with this on the weekend, you know.
No, I mean that week I think was pretty shitty for me in particular. I think up until midweek when I was not fully recentered or rebalanced. That I think that Monday afterward was uh, there was nothing else I could do. I was like, I have to go in because I had things to do at work or like my day had to go on. I still had to go to gym. I still had to, you know, as Prush said, come home, cook, clean, blah 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 blah. All of that still had to go on. You, I didn't let all of those other areas fall completely, but I was still really, really broken at that point as well. I was stable enough to get through the day at least, and then try that evening again to see what I could do.
Sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah.
It was what it was. But I'm here. I've survived 100% of my bad days, and I will survive 100% of my bad days to come. So,
Amen to that. All right. So the reason I've asked to sort of try and identify the difference between cracks and demands, right, is because your approach to it would be different. If you have a crack, you'd want to repair that. And if there's demands to the cup, then you could probably look at those demands and go, okay, well, what could I potentially cut out? Either I need a bigger cup or I need a faster way to fill it, or I need fewer demands, right? And there are some things that, like if you suffered some form of grief or trauma, that's a very noticeable, clearly identifiable crack. It's always going to drain your energy if you don't deal with it. Whereas there's other things that demand your energy, but could potentially do it without you even realizing, like stressing about stuff. Like, is it like your income's not enough? Is your family situation not great? Is that a crack, or is that a demand on your energy that you could potentially alleviate somehow?
so those are like the side quest items in life
Yeah.
that come unexpectedly, as I'm saying it. I mean, a demand, I think, like you correctly say, Dean, is about evaluation, right?
Yeah.
Do I really need this in my life? Yes or no? Is it adding value to my life? Firstly, and if it doesn't really add value to my life, then it shouldn't be there. I think you in the beginning you said something about damn, what is the word you used? should have noted it down. But yeah, I've been writing everything down, but like just that one word. Okay. But
Murphy's Law.
yeah, if it really doesn't add value to life, then it really doesn't need to be there. You need to cut it out, just in some regard. So if it's demanding a part of you and you don't necessarily need it, it shall be gone forever and for all time. But if it is something that like you just said now, that is low energy and perhaps it is of some sort of value or is some sort of benefit to you, and you see that the demand is not too great in terms of strain mentally, physically, emotionally, and capable of doing it and have the capacity, then yeah, why not do it, in my opinion.
Okay. I mean, the reason I'm asking, and Guj, I'll come back to you in a second, is that we're living in a time where stress, depression, anxiety, and mental health issues are seemingly at their highest, or at least the awareness of those things are at their highest.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be because a lot of people have cracks in their cups. It could be because a lot of people have demands on the cup, or it could be because we're actually sitting in a case where there's both, where you have a cracked cup and there's a lot of demand coming out of that, and we just have no idea how to go about solving this. And I think, and this is just a theory, but I think that's maybe what's happening here, and that's why there's such a wave of fatigue for everyone. And if there's a way of understanding the difference between the two, we then have a means of approaching the correction of it.
Well, I mean, it depends then, like, a demand on life is something that is, well, the way I see it sometimes is either necessary or unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I see it. Like, for example, a demand on life, for example, would be, okay, I need to grow more in this area, either like physically, financially, whatever, to then level up or do more in my life. That's what I see as a demand in life. Something that's either necessary or unnecessary. And based off of that, then we can make a judgment on, what do I allow, what I don't allow. I mean, that's just the way I sort of see it. It's something where I get to decide. But a crack or something that has come about, it isn't something that I get to really decide on. It's something that has just occurred, right? So there's no choice in it.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, demand should have, it's almost transactional in a sense where you should get something back. If something's demanding your energy, then you must get something back. Whereas a crack, it just takes from you. Like trauma doesn't give you anything back, it just takes from you, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like your work environment, for example, it's a demand on you, but you get a salary back.
Yeah.
Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, that's from my understanding what a demand is, right? It's like you say, it's transactional, and it provides you with some value, or it doesn't provide you with value, and which is why you get the choice of either entertaining it or not entertaining it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I do agree with Code. But I was just thinking back to a situation that I had while my cup was being relatively emptied quickly, quickly emptied relative to normal situations, but I still had a crack that I needed to fix, and I tried to do it piecemeal, and in one case it worked, but in another it didn't. So it's a thing of sometimes it's just a judgment call, I guess, like Code was saying. You have to check and see if you can do something about it, and if you can, then act. But you can also need to check if sometimes you can't do something about it, and then you need to postpone it until you can. And things like you mentioned at the beginning of the question, I think if it's a family thing or if it's something that's not necessarily in your control, but you can have some impact on it that will solve the crack for you, right? Then it maybe requires some piecemeal attempt to understand if you can solve it, and then if you can't, then you just say, okay, I'll deal with this at a different point. But
Gotcha.
also, I like to give an example, just so that people don't think I'm talking about puzzles. Um, uh, let's use I don't want to use the most complicated example in the world. Let's say you let's go back to my example of you broke up with someone, right? Um, we've got a lot of stuff happening, and you broke up with someone. Now, you can address it, right, on a daily basis for an hour, or you can wait until the weekend to deal with it. Maybe you got things happening this weekend, the next weekend, and the weekend following after that, and then you're gonna wait until the last weekend to deal with it. But you know how that stuff festers. It's like a thing in your finger, you know, like a splinter,
Right.
and then eventually it'll come out at the wrong time. You know what I mean?
Right.
Someone will ask you about it, and then you'll be like, oh, now I have to deal with this person, and I haven't even dealt with it myself yet. Um, and sometimes it's okay to look at the things that are challenging you in a part wise effort if it just means you sideline something in your day for a little bit, like half an hour, and then you deal with it. You know, even if it's just a little piece to write something down as an example of why you think the breakup was good for you or bad for you, and then just spend a little time on it without. But it's also very difficult because sometimes your mind plays games with you, and then you open up that can of worms, and then you end up going down a rabbit hole. So it requires quite a lot of energy management and control of it. So like I think it works very well with like Yasha's situation where you can compartmentalize stuff. So I'm gonna deal with this for half an hour and then I'm not gonna deal with it for the rest of the day. And then you close that box. But a lot of people aren't like that. And it takes a long time to become like that, to where you learn how to open a box, play with it a little bit, then close that box. And a lot of people can't close the box once they open it. So it really requires a bit of judgment on your
Mm-hmm.
part,
Yeah.
but also emotional control and mental control. And I find even nowadays I'm struggling a bit with that because when, uh, uh, like, if I'm struggling emotionally with something, I find that my sleep is really impacted
Mm-hmm.
and I wake up really tired. But if I don't have any challenges for that week, by like Thursday, Friday, I'm sleeping like a baby, you know. Um, so yeah, it's a thing of it's difficult to control. But I have done it in situations where I've dealt with it piece by piece, or even if it was a large situation, person by person, and that can help eventually. Uh, but yeah, it really depends on the situation.
I think you mentioned like wait until you deal with it later. Like how do you do it? How do you do that? How do you wait to deal with something? Like you said, I'll wait to deal with this till the weekend or a few weeks down the line. I know
Exactly
you
how
mentioned
you
it.
said. Yeah, it's exactly
Oh,
the whole thing about putting it in boxes.
okay, okay,
I don't know. I over the years I've learned how to just put stuff away,
okay.
and maybe by force, because you just couldn't deal with that at the time, or maybe it affects you subconsciously, but in your conscious, active person, you
Mm.
tend not to look at it, and then when you have the time, then you sit and you think about it, or it. I think it happened to me when I really got impacted by something, and I think I told you the story in a podcast previously where it impacted me so badly I couldn't focus at work. Um, for the whole week, I was just like dead brain. I was reading the same paragraph over and over, and I think that's what led me to learn how to compartmentalize things. So if something is really stressing me out and I know I can't deal with it now, I'll be like, I've also learned the thing of if I can't solve the problem now, is it really going to help me to sit and think about it? You know, but you kind of have to be able to create the boxes within yourself to do that, and it does affect you emotionally, right? And it does change your mental side, especially like you're not going to be the normal person you are. You're going to have this baggage, but you know that you can only open that suitcase when you have the energy to deal with that suitcase. Um, and you kind of have to lug it around until you get there. It's because it's so difficult to deal with the big problems all the time. Uh, and if you're dealing with it in a situation where you shouldn't be dealing with it, then it just spills everywhere. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's just how I see it a little bit.
Yeah, and I suppose I know you touched on as well. like the aspect where like you feel tired even after some sort of rest.
Yeah.
I think like during that emotional strain period, I was getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and
Yeah.
it was quite hectic. You just can't go back to sleep, and
Yeah.
um,
That literally I was waiting for that line. You just can't go back to sleep after you wake up.
that
Because yeah.
restlessness or
It's
something,
not
whatever
even
it's
that.
called.
It's
Yeah,
the minute you wake up, your mind just wakes up, and then your
yeah,
mind goes to that space, and
actually,
then
that
after
place.
that, nothing you can do will put you to sleep,
Yeah,
um, because it's just trained to focus on that problem,
yeah,
uh, and that requires a level of, yeah, I don't even want to swear, but like, uh, give a fuckness, because it's just a thing of you have to learn. And I continuously, like on a yearly basis, I have to reteach myself this effort.
Mhm.
Um, because on a yearly basis, there's just something else that's thrown at you that you just sometimes cannot deal with, you know? Um, and you just, I found that it works for me. It might not work for everyone. It might even not work for like more than 10% of the population, but it works for me because I've learned how to deal with it that way. Um, and yeah, because sometimes you can't deal, you know?
Nope, nope. No matter what you try, I suppose.
Yeah, and I can't be the person that just switches off in in a crowded room.
So what are some of the? I know you said as well. You just can't go back to sleep, but
Hmm.
what are the soothing techniques that you have tried in that
Oh,
instance?
okay, when I used to live alone, and I couldn't sleep, I would literally just, when I knew I wasn't going to sleep, I'd just go do something. I'd be like, you know what? I can't sleep, right? It's not going to help me to try and sleep because I'm just going to toss and turn, and then the bed is going to become uncomfortable, and then I'm really not going to like it. So I go do something else, right? I literally go do something else, or I take out my phone and I do something else, or I try and focus on something else. I try and read something to get my mind off of it, or I try to write something. So I started writing things, not stories or anything, but just things, just whatever comes to mind. If you have a hobby or there's something you want to do at home, like, you know, uh, plan it out, map it out. What you guys told me about really helps is journaling. If you're not gonna, okay, let me put it to you this way, right? How's about this? The next time you wake up, right, at 2 o'clock in the morning and you know you're not going to be able to sleep, right? Why don't you just deal with the problem in the from 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock, right? Journal it out, right? Or journal as much of it as you can, right? And then try and go to sleep at 4 o'clock. But set an
So what
alarm
you're
for it.
saying, yeah, like there's a, I think so that people don't misunderstand this. You're not talking about putting a band-aid on a bullet wound here, right? You're not talking about a distraction. You're
No,
talking about a steady course of treatment or a steady course of recovery action with
yeah,
a defined outcome ultimately.
yeah. Because if you try, okay, here's what I first tried and obviously didn't work, right? Was when I couldn't sleep, I just went onto social media and I went onto TikTok and I went onto thing and then I went
See,
onto
that's a
Pinterest.
distraction.
Pinterest always does make you feel a little bit
Sometimes you
better,
need a
right?
distraction, bro.
No, no,
Fair, fair.
that's true, right? That's true. But Pinterest does make you feel better because there's always motivational stuff on there, right? And there's always some motivation that backs up your side of the story, right?
The
But
story
that's
you
not
tell
the,
yourself. Oh no.
yes, exactly, right? That's exactly right. But what I realized was this is a band-aid, right? To a bullet wound.
Yeah,
What you
yeah.
should be doing is if you're not going to sleep either way, you can either totally remove yourself from the situation, right? Because meditation not going to help you, right? Um, and or you can try to address this thing in parts, and that's why I was saying doing things in piecemeal, because if it's going to consume you, right, you don't have a choice, right?
True.
So from 2 till 3, set an alarm, take out a book, write some shit about what your problem is, right? And then try to go back to sleep after that because you just need to get some of it out of your head. And this is why I think someone said it, or I read it somewhere, or I'm really bad with remembering which famous person said things, but it's a thing of sometimes your problem becomes so much easier to handle when you're sharing it on other people's shoulders, right? Now, you can't wake someone up at 2 o'clock in the morning, but you can write it on a page, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can write all the thoughts. And this is why I like the idea of journaling. I'm terrible at doing these things, but it's a thing of, oh, when you write stuff on a page, no one's judging you. You know what I mean? Other than yourself. So you can write whatever you want. You can put all the swear words you want. You can put all the
I
negative
love
attitude
that.
about it, right? You can write all the bad things about the situation. You can write all the bad things you feel about the situation in every form and word that you want, because nobody can judge you about it, right? And then once you've gotten as much of it out as you can, then try to go back to sleep. Because if you're not going to sleep from 2 to 3 anyway, what difference does it make if you get up and write about it?
True.
I think just to add to that as well, this whole thing about working through the night is the only way out is through.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is through
Yep.
the pain.
Yeah, you
The
said that like
only way
100
out.
times.
Yeah. There's no other way. I mean, you have to sit with it and really understand it, and then go. There's no other way. And I love that you said as well. One of the only ways is to share it on someone else's shoulders, because that Monday, when I think I told Dean this, I had a completely emotional day at work, and then we have this thing at work called "Are you okay?" And if you ask the question, I answer truthfully, because I don't really show facades to different people. I said I wasn't okay, and then I kind of related my problem to the person who was listening, and after that really set me on the path to recovery, because I shared my burden with someone else at that point. And that day that I got back, afterward, it was, geez, it was such a weight off of me in that instant.
Yeah, I like to have someone to share stuff with. Um, it I find it really helps. It's not always good for that other person, but sometimes it also just requires someone to listen.
Yeah.
Um, you it's tough though, because sometimes people don't like talking about their problems to other people.
True.
Or other people feel a bit awkward about it as well. But no, I think this
Yeah.
was quite good for me as well. But I also like that you said journaling, and I think Dean seconded this by his reaction, is the non-judgmental side of writing it down.
Mm.
Or when someone can't judge you, and you can just be as open and honest as you want to in that space.
The page is a safe space.
The page is safe space. I was gonna save this for my next 30-second short, but I'm just gonna mention this to you, to everyone right now before the short comes out. Where is this thing that I wrote down? Where is it? It talks about what is a friend, and a friend is basically a safe space in physical form.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people confuse friends with company, and that's a nice way of differentiating.
Yeah. And I think that's what I think all of you mean to me. It's just that that's one aspect of it, a safe space in the shape of a person, and that's literally what I see all of you as, in one aspect, of course.
Can I ask if we consider it a mutual safe space, or is it just a safe space?
I think it should be a mutual safe space.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be like just one-sided.
Yeah.
Because then
Some
you just
people
end up
like
using the
well, some
person,
people like being safe spaces for everybody else, but aren't comfortable allowing themselves to be vulnerable with someone else.
That's true.
Oh,
That's true.
Oh, that's what you meant. Okay.
Yeah. Well, at least that's how I understood it.
No, I do both. I mean, you saw this weekend I was both vulnerable and have safe space.
Yeah.
I allow myself to be vulnerable to that level.
I mean, some people might see it as being as offering a gift to someone to be their safe space, but also allowing someone to be your safe space is also a gift. We talked about that as well. You know, allowing someone to provide for you, it makes them feel valuable.
Well, it's in some cases it's energy giving.
Exactly, yeah.
I don't even know if you answered the question or what we initially were discussing.
Yeah, I think we
You
were-
did, yeah. You answered it a little while ago and then some. So I mean, I'm not complaining. But I mean, that's largely the extent of all the questions. Do you guys have any closing comments?
I think
Go for it.
I think Prash and Dean, you both also mentioned that it's an area we don't focus on, don't consider. Dean, you mentioned like globally this is an issue, but it's still not being given a lot of credence to. I mean, we say,
Yeah, I feel like it's the undercurrent that's going to catch us all off guard, if it hasn't already.
I think it has. I think it has already caught us, or caught up with us at least.
Yeah.
Definitely caught me.
but it. I think if you really into your self care or into what your next steps or some steps should be for yourself is dive into this area. If you're listening to this, we'd like you to dive in to fully understand like what your current state is. Like in the analogy of the champagne fountain, find out where the weaknesses are, find out what you can fix and what you can't fix. And then I think Dean was mentioning the Japanese art of kintsugi, which really speaks to making something that is not beautiful and repairing it in such a way that it is actually beautiful again. So look at it that way, where no crack is something seen as ugly, but it's something that it can be turned into a beautiful space.
There is a whole world of leaders that have been through some form of horrible trauma, that have taken that trauma and turned it into a strength and have uplifted people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is that crack that's taken energy from you, once you repair it, it can be something that you can show to people and help them in their lives.
Which is a large part why we did this podcast.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not that we're broken individuals. We're individuals who have had enough experience in areas to be able to show people, there's better ways of living, and through our experience at least, this is what we've learned and what we've come through and the skills we've built and how we've built those skills as well to show people. And we've been quite vulnerable on this podcast as well. Letting people into certain portions of our life to a certain extent of our lives as well. So we're pretty open and honest about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me the parting thing would be if you find that, like a lot of people, you're just waiting for the weekend to like zone out. Even sometimes in the evenings you zone out, and then for the next day. I found that there's lots of times in the year when I do that. It's a thing of ask yourself if you're enjoying this, and if you're not, then it's time to start looking. And I'm even telling myself this now as we speak, but it's time to start building the joy in blocks again, and it takes a little bit of energy to do so, but I also feel like it's a muscle. So the more you work it, the more you'll find a balance, even if it just means half a day instead of the whole weekend of chilling. You spend half a day doing stuff that brings you some level of joy, and it definitely will improve your life. And where you've got cracks, try to deal with them, even if it's slowly. Uh, it really does help free your shoulders after a while. Uh, but it does take effort and it's not easy, and you should ask for help where you need it, or even look for people to speak to that you find as, like we've said, a safe space. It really does help.
Very nice. We've covered quite a lot today. Let's see if I can tie this up in a nice little bow. I'm going to use the cup analogy because it might be easier. So at the start of this podcast, I said it was about rest, recovery, and fatigue. And I think the easiest way to look at that is going from awareness to action, right? So knowing when, in terms of rest, recovery, and fatigue, it's about knowing when your cup is running low or empty. It's about knowing if your cup has cracks in it, and it's about knowing how to fill up your cup. And the action you can take is identify any cracks and find ways to repair them. Find ways to then fill your cup up, things that give you joy, and then evaluate the things that take from your cup, the demands of the cup. And if they're not contributing things back, then you should seriously consider cutting them out. So repair, refill, and use the cup a little bit better.
That's it.
And that's it.
Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys. Great as always.
That's a good one. And thank you once again, listeners, for tuning in. We do apologize for our mini break, but like I said, we've had many awesome things happen these past few months. It's 6 months into the year now, and we hope you've also had a very productive and life-changing, in a positive way, 6 months to the year. And even if it wasn't life-changing, there's no reason why something amazing can't happen to you tomorrow if you just believe and take actions, toward that better tomorrow. So we do wish you well, and we appreciate you and your listenership. Until again next time, thank you. This is me out, and the boys out as well. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.